Delayed but not denied. I know, I know. Alana, where you been? We was expecting this on Wednesday. Listen, I'm here now, and that's all that matters. Welcome to week 3 of Intro to Documentary Filmmaking course. I know a lot has been happening in the world. A lot has been happening globally. A lot has been happening in your lives personally. For those who are still rocking with me and giving me grace, I sincerely appreciate you. For those who were like, I was super excited in the beginning and kind of but you need time to hop back on the train, all grace to you. These videos are for you to use whenever you need it. It will be up. It's its own, YouTube channel now. But for those who are like, yes, let's get back to it, we here. Week 3 is all about production. If you have not watched week 1 and week 1 was just the basic fundamentals, naming all of the different types of documentaries that you can make. And week 2 was all about the art of pre-production. And so making sure that you have a efficient and effective plan leading into production day. So week 3 is all about production. The thing about production, or the funny thing about production, is this is the place that everybody rushes to get to, because this is the day that you break out your camera or your phone. But if you did not have or spend time in pre-production, this is going to be a very long day. It's going to be a very frustrating day. Or maybe you'll get through the day and then watch your stuff and realize a lot of this I don't like and I want to do over. For those of you who may not watch my film, The Kinloch Doc, the link is in the syllabus. But the very first day I broke out a camera, the interview, the scene and everything was beautiful. Can't use none of that footage because I did not take into account we were shooting outdoors. It's super windy. I have 6 people, 3 mics. None of this I even thought about, but I'm also the person that has to learn on my toes, and I needed that experience to truly ground myself and realize, okay, I have to spend more time in pre-production, not just in planning the story that I want to tell, but in really leaning into the logistics of what it truly takes to bring my vision to life and all that requires. But for the sake of this course, we're going to try to keep it as simple as possible. Okay. So going back into the art of pre-production and production. So let's start with your setup, right? So we're starting with our setup, and what I mean by setup is how you were going to position your subject if you were doing it on a person, which for the sake of this is probably the easiest. Even those of you who gave ideas of the type of topics that you wanted to discuss, remember we talked about the difference between a topic and a story. You're finding the person that fits the story within your topic. If your topic is maternal health, Black maternal health, I hope by now that you have somebody in mind that can speak to whether it be a doula, whatever. You catch my drift. So setup meaning how do you want to position your subject? The type of camera that you are wanting to use. I'm not going to get into the weed and the technical stuff having to do with camera and setting up your camera and setting up lighting. Like, again, this is introductory. I am assuming many of you are using your phone. At least that's what you put on your sign up sheet. So I recommend getting a sturdy cell phone tripod off of Amazon. I will link the one I use in the description box, as well as a SD reader cord. Get another drive to hold your footage, because I don't want you to just keep it in your phone. So even if you're shooting footage on your phone, I recommend having another place to store it, whether that be having it in your Google Drive or a Dropbox to clear your actual phone of the storage. Sidebar caveat. But for the sake of this, you're going to have your subject. How do you want them positioned? Do you want them centered directly to the camera and looking directly at you? Do you want them kind of veered off to the side of the camera where you will be behind or beside? So it's like they're looking away from the camera, but they're really looking at you. Because remember the different types of documentaries. Expository, that's the most traditional. Or do you want more observational? Are you going to be filming this person in the element? So they're not sitting down for an interview. Are you going to be filming them walking around or engaging in their work? Participatory, are you engaged in the film, right? If this all sounds confusing, go back to week 1. It'll all make sense. But how do you want your subject set up? Right now, my background, everything is in focus. But traditionally, a lot of people love that shallow depth of field. And what that means is your subject is in focus and everything behind you is kind of blurry to kind of make your subject more profound. Even if you don't have an iPhone, your smartphone has this capability. I can hyperlink some more details to that because I don't want to get into the weeds of that either. I don't want y'all to get caught up in the aesthetics. I want y'all to spend time in story. We can get into the aesthetics another day, another class. I want you to prioritize the messaging of your story. Okay, first and foremost. Number 2, interviewing. Interviewing is an art. I talked about these questions, these 150 prompts called Life Story. I got these off the TikTok shop. I will also hyperlink these in the description box. If you don't have these, if you have whoever you have in mind to interview, whether it be your main subject or if you have additional subjects that you are bringing into your story to help fill out the story, that you know what you want to ask them. So I keep going back to Black maternal health, but if that is your story, and if you have a new mother who just recently gave birth, or one that is about to give birth, if that is your subject, maybe the questions are only geared towards her expectations as a mom or just her journey on motherhood. We're probably not asking her where does she work or how does she get into the field that she's in if it is not relevant to this story, right? So with interviewing the person that you bring in, you kind of start off light to get them comfortable. Not everybody does this every day. Not everybody sits somewhere and addresses a camera every single day and kind of knows what to expect when being filmed. And sometimes it takes a little while for that guard to go down and that barrier to go down. So you want your first 3 or 4 questions to be a little lighter. What did you eat for breakfast today? What else do you have on your agenda today? What are you looking forward to the most? What plans do you have for the weekend? Are you excited about this? Kind of get them to, loosen their buttons, to get comfortable with you and for you to get comfortable as the filmmaker, because again, interviewing is an art. Number 2, you want to make sure that you, again, stay away from yes or no questions. You want open-ended questions. So rather than saying, are you busy later today? Yes or no. Oh, what plans do you have later on today? Oh, I don't have any plans. I think I'm just going to, it gives them the opportunity to kind of go into or delve into whatever story that they want to tell. And those are the type of questions that you want to lean in with in a chronological order. Also, I learned this the hard way. There is an order to your questions, not just necessarily chronological, but also think about their emotional bandwidth. For instance, my father is a key subject in my film, The Kinloch Doc, and I had to interview him 4 times. The 4 times were not just because of him. I also had to learn how to be a better interviewer, but I distinctly remember one of those times I had asked him a question that triggered him, not necessarily in a bad way, but the film is about family and we've had a lot of family loss. And this was very early on in the interview, and the question that I asked him made him tear up and cry. And now I'm thinking to myself, I can't keep filming you because your eyes are going to be red for the duration of me filming. And say, for instance, if there were certain responses that you made, you wouldn't just be towards the end of the film. He could be the intro to my film, but the question I asked, now his eyes are red. So I can't use that footage anymore. So I wasn't able to use none of that footage because I had to learn, if it's anything having to do with his mom, if it's anything having to do with losing a sibling, or anything that can potentially make this person emotional, you want to save those questions towards the very end. Keep it light, but impactful and informative. But when you get into the weeds of like anything that could potentially, set someone off, but also give them a caveat to say, if there's anything that I ask you that you're uncomfortable with, give them the agency to say, I prefer not to answer that. That has never happened to me, but I always give that disclaimer. But just be mindful of when you're writing out your questions, and if you know or are familiar with this person's story, leave the emotional questions towards the end. Another thing to keep in mind when asking them questions is after they respond, even if you think they're done with their response, leave about 2 to 3 seconds of silence. Give it some breath, give it some pause. It feels awkward because nobody likes to be silent. Somebody always wants to break the silence. Give it a moment because maybe they don't have a complete thought, or maybe in that silence, what they're thinking is, they want me to say more. And sometimes they say more, or they're like, I want to say it in a different way. This also helps in post-production, i.e. your edit, because it gives you a clear-cut, distinct stopping point that you don't have to merge into another sentence. So every time you ask a question, when you think they're done, pause. More often than not, they'll continue on with their statement or give you more details to their statement. Another thing to keep in mind about interviewing is a lot, y'all. It's not just asking people questions, it truly is art. Another thing to be mindful of when it comes to interviewing is you need them to recite the question in their answer every time. And because we don't do this in everyday conversations, the more comfortable your subject gets, the harder it's going to be. So in the beginning, you say, okay, can you tell me what you ate for breakfast today? For breakfast this morning, I ate blah, blah, blah. Can you tell me your name? My name is blah, 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 blah. The more comfortable they get is when you say, what you ate for breakfast today? Oh, I had some eggs, some bacon. No, because when it comes to the edit, you're telling a full-on story. And so now when you're watching documentaries, you will often hear the subject in the film recite whatever the interviewer asked them in the first place. So make sure, and what's going to happen is going to feel awkward because they're going to be deep into their response. And you're going to be like, I'm so sorry, I have to interrupt you, but could you please start your sentence over with recite the question in your answer. Another thing that will happen, they may jumble over their words. Anytime that happens, make sure they start their statement over. Do not let them continue. Do not let them continue. It makes it so much harder in the edit. So it feels awkward and uncomfortable because you feel like you're being rude for constantly interrupting them. But again, just remind them in the beginning, if you misstep your words, please feel free to start your response over. If you need more time to think about your response, please take your time. Like if you forget to recite the question in your answer, just take a breath and recite it in your answer. So just remind them before you even get the camera rolling so you can feel comfortable interjecting, because again, this is going to help you on the back end. I think those are all of the essentials for interviewing for production day. Another thing I want you to consider, I didn't do this with my first film, I did this with my second film. Have people on site to help you, or at least another person. In the film world, it's called a production assistant. This could be a mama. I don't care. Somebody else to help you so you can focus directly on your interview subject and just getting the story out. And whoever else you have could be managing logistics, ordering lunch, scanning, and documents and photos or what have you. Just have another body there to kind of help bring you relief and reprieve, and just be a third eye to look for things that you may have missed because you're so engrossed in telling your story. So always have another person there with you. Another thing, keep filming. So say for instance, you think you're done with the interview, do not just automatically stop the camera. Like you and your subject could be engaging in conversation, keep the camera rolling, because there may be some stuff that they say now that they think the interview is over, that they're more comfortable. They let their shoulders down and you're still kind of talking about the interview. And don't ask them anything that they wouldn't want on camera for sure, but keep the camera rolling even when you think you're done with your interview. Okay. So I think I hit on the key parts. Again, the things that I mentioned in this video, I'm going to put into the description box. Next week is all about post-production. I know some of you are like, but like what type of camera and what type of editing software and what type gets and gadgets to appease. I will send that in an email, and I will put that also in the description box. But the whole point of this class is to use what you have. Okay, use what you have. I sincerely appreciate you all's patience. Again, the next week is all about the art of post-production. Post-production just means piecing it together. Now you're in post, so that all has to do with editing. So that's probably the most intricate I will get in this class. Remember, I host open office hours every Thursday at 7:30 Central Standard Time. I've sent out an email. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions. I will see y'all next week.